A is for Ancient, a portmanteau of ancient and Sonichu that appears in Chris Chan's Sonichu comics. It's mostly used in reference to the Ancient prophecy, a prophecy that appears in Sonichu number 2 and was passed down by the Cherokean clan of American Indians. The prophecy states that once Chris Chan creates Sonichu, a great evil will be unleashed, and Chris, his rival, and his lover will obtain hedgehog powers. The rival and lover were based on real people Chris knew, and Chris later dropped the idea that this female character was his character's soulmate, thus making the prophecy inherently incorrect. As the Quickie states, why or how the Cherokee would make a pun on the English word ancient and the Japanese word chew is unclear. B is for Boyfriend Free. Chris Chan's young adult life was centered heavily around his search for a girlfriend. He didn't have much luck, and so outsourced much of his search to an attraction sign, where he posted the attributes he was looking for in a mate. These included being thin, white, and having moderate to high income. One of the necessary attributes of a potential girlfriend was being boyfriend-free. It's thought that Chris was often rejected by girls who put him down nicely by saying that they already had boyfriends, thus necessitating him to limit his search to boyfriend-free girls. C is for Kamehameha, a parody of the Kamehameha from Dragon Ball Z. This was a magic attack that Chris Chan believed he was actually capable of performing. It would curse people with bad luck, and there are accounts of him using the move on shopping mall guards as well as his college's dean of students. This got him suspended. He's also done it on camera to strike fear into his foes. D is for Date Ed, although the idea sounds dated. That's a pun according to Chris Chan. Chris thought that public schools should have a dating education class, which would teach young people how to do everything from finding a partner to actually having sexual intercourse. He also wanted students to be assigned a partner in their class. He outlined what such a class would look like in Sonichu issue number 9, in which his characters take a dating class. They get paired up at random and form long-lasting intimate relationships. To quote Chris, "We currently enforce and have made required sexual education classes in high schools most everywhere. That is good for after date number 3 or so, but the question remains, how do we find, attract, and talk to a single member of our individually respective opposite gender to even have a first date ever with?" It is clear that Chris thinks a dating class is the obvious solution. E is for Electric Hedgehog Pokemon, a species of Pokemon invented by Chris when he had the genius idea of combining Pikachu with Sonic the Hedgehog. This clash created an anthropomorphic hedgehog creature with electric powers. The species is named Sonichu, but the original member of the species, and the only one not to be hatched from an egg, is also named Sonichu, with other members of the species getting Sonichu as a suffix, like Wild Sonichu or Chris Chan Sonichu. And yes, Chris does think that he is part Sonichu, and thus has electrical powers himself. Sonichu has gone on to star in over a dozen comic books written and drawn by Chris, and Chris spent most of 2020 channeling Sonichu's spirit and pretending to be possessed by him. F is for Fourth Wall. The fourth wall is a term that comes from theater and refers to the fourth wall of the set that has been removed so that the audience can see inside. Suspension of disbelief requires the audience to assume that the characters see a wall where they themselves only see open air. The term has come to mean any instance in which a fictional character addresses the consumer, as often actors would break the illusion of the fourth wall by addressing the audience, and thus acknowledging that they're in a play. Chris Chan believes that there are 2 dimensions in a vast multiverse. There's the one that we're in right now, and another where fictional characters live, and dividing these universes is what he calls the fourth wall, which he currently believes is breaking, and once it's gone, our universes will merge together. This is the basis of his religion. H is for Hexbox, the dastardly evil video game consoles whose name cannot even be spoken, and who will be promptly defeated by Nintendo and PlayStation. At least that's all according to Chris Chan. Whether or not he believed that the name Xbox was actually impure and thus shouldn't be said, or just because he thought that this was a good insult toward a brand that he didn't like, is unclear. But Chris referred to Xboxes as Hexboxes for many years, before randomly dropping this disdain toward them and beginning to buy them to play games on himself. Now, Chris owns consoles from all the major brands, but the era of the Hexbox coincides with early issues of Sonichu, so the nomenclature has forever made its way into Christory. I is for Infinitely High Boyfriend Factor. The infinitely high boyfriend factor is Chris Chan's primary concern on his love quest. It refers to the incredibly high probability that any given girl he speaks to will already have a boyfriend, thus making it impossible for him to find a sweetheart. Using a nonsensical equation that Chris came up with, he calculated that there were very few men in the world with whom he shouldn't hate, including his father and Santa Claus, because the other men were competition for him finding a girlfriend. Chris obviously did not factor in gay men to the infinitely high boyfriend factor. If he had done that, he might have appreciated them for taking themselves out of the competition for women. Instead, he just hates both straight and gay men for separate reasons. J is for jerk-op, a portmanteau of jerk and cop, although paradoxically, the term doesn't seem to refer to actual cops. Chris Chan has had many negative interactions with authority figures over the years, including mall cops, prison guards, and police officers. It seems that he has gotten his revenge by calling them mean names, but he also makes sure to distinguish them from true and honest police officers by depicting jerk-ops with fake badges, sometimes made out of wood and sometimes made out of graham crackers. This was probably done in order to allow for his cognitive dissonance in his belief that authority figures will protect him from bullies and trolls, but that he was unjustly persecuted during the various times where he himself actually broke the law. K is for Krakow, which Chris Chan thinks is the sound that lightning makes. Come on, we all know that it's actually ka-chow. Chris Chan will often sign his tweets with lightning emojis, and the onomatopoeia Krakow to symbolize his electricity powers. L is for Love Quest, the name Chris Chan gave his lifelong journey to find a girl to marry and have a daughter named Crystal with. His love quest included walking or sitting in public with a sign that he hoped would attract women to him. Chris claimed that his love quest ended in the mid-2010s when he married the fictional character Magi-chan from his own comic books, but in private he admitted to confidants that he was still looking for a human woman to be with. The only women we know Chris to have any kind of physical intimacy with were a prostitute he hired in 2012 and his mother, for which he was arrested in the summer of 2021. M is for Monthly Tugboat, the name Chris Chan gave his disability insurance payouts. The expression, waiting for my ship to come in, dates back to the 16th century and refers to riches being brought to shore on merchant ships for their owners. Chris Chan heard this idiom and changed the ship to be a much smaller seafaring vessel, a tugboat, because of his much smaller income of $1,300 that he gets from the government every month. Thus, every month, he's waiting for his tugboat to come in. N is for noviophobia, which means a fear of boyfriends, or at least Chris Chan thinks that it does. Chris created the term by combining the Spanish word for boyfriend, novio, with the Greek suffix phobia, which means an irrational fear or a fear to an irrational degree. The fear came about during Chris Chan's love quest, when girls would often reject him by telling him they already had boyfriends. This made Chris hate most men, but it especially made him fear being rejected, specifically by girls who already had a boyfriend, and thus he feared boyfriends. O is for OC, which means original character, or original creator. Chris Chan uses those interchangeably, which makes it very hard to understand exactly what he means. In most contexts, these have completely opposite meanings. The term OC is used by the wider internet as well, usually to refer to fan-made characters of a particular property, but Chris uses it to refer to any fictional character, and also believes that creators will merge with their most popular OCs after the dimensional merge. Thus, OCs will merge with their OCs. P is for Private Villa of Corrupted Citizens, which is an alternate acronym for PVCC, which were the initials of Chris Chan's community college, Piedmont, Virginia Community College. In the Sonichu comics, The evil witch Mary Lee Walsh, modeled after the dean of students who expelled Chris in real life, leads evil armies of brainwashed students and jerk-offs out of the private villa of corrupted citizens. They serve as the main antagonistic force in the comics, at least until Walsh's defeat, after which all the brainwashed citizens are brought to their senses. Q is for quarters. Not much is known about the economy of the Sonichu comics, other than that their taxes must be insanely high to pay for an ever-present police force, multiple soup hotels, repairs from superhero battles, and a salary for Sonichu. But we do know that there are two kinds of quarters in Quickville, C quarters and W quarters, which we can assume stand for Kristen Chandler quarters and Weston quarters, although that's just speculation. Despite them being named after the US currency, which obviously refer to the coin being worth a quarter of a dollar, C quarters and W quarters have different values, with C quarters being worth 1/10 of a W quarter. R is for Rosechew. Rosechew is the name of both a species of hedgehog Pokemon, and also the name of the original Pokemon of that species, though she's sometimes called Rosechew Prime, or Rosie. She was born male, and evolved all the way to a Raichu before being transformed into a Rosechew by the power emitted from Sonichu's transformation. The two met and fell in love, and using magic, Rosechew became female and able to bear children. She is often depicted as significantly less powerful than Sonichu, but did learn how to Mega Evolve before him. She has had multiple children, 3 with Sonichu, and several more with her Nazi prison guards during their occupation of Quickville. These children were given up for adoption after their camp was liberated. S is for SLGBTQ, a movement Chris Chan created to promote rights for individuals who are straight, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, and queer. Chris himself added the word straight to the acronym, so that his heterosexual characters could participate in gay rights events in the Sonichu comics. In a letter he wrote from jail in 2021, Chris noted that he no longer uses the acronym, and finally understands why others don't include straight in their acronyms in the first place. T is for Temple. The temple is Chris Chan's home, which also serves as the center of his religion. He believes that he can derive power from its physical location, although apparently this power is able to be moved, such as when he moved it to the hotel he was staying at after being forced out of his home, and then to his jail cell when he was arrested. The temple was listed on Google Maps for a short period of time as Sonichu headquarters before being removed. Ironically, people do make legitimate pilgrimages to Chris's house, although none of them do it to worship his godly powers. They do it to see the meme in real life. U is for Unclit. On his quest to become a woman, Chris Chan sought out magical solutions to his problems, and actually believed that listening to meditation sounds would grow him female genitalia. On top of this, he also used a stud to pierce his taint in order to form the approximation of a clitoris. He eventually gave up on physically transforming himself, thankfully, although he did begin to cope by fully deluding himself that he would be able to cross over into a parallel dimension where he is a woman. V is for Virgin with Rage. Like all cartoon characters, Chris Chan has a catchphrase. Actually, he has several, but one is his self-pitying cry of being a virgin with rage, which he uses to excuse his bad behavior. He believes that everyone would understand that his bad actions are caused by the rage he feels inside from still being a virgin. He also used the phrase in a lyric in his parody of the Backstreet Boys song Tell Me Why. Tell me why. Tell me why I don't need a cute girl my age. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I have a boyfriend. W is for Water on the Rocks. A drink being on the rocks is of course a universally understood phrase which means that there's ice in the drink. Water on the rocks is a funny phrase as the term is usually only associated with alcoholic drinks. But Chris Chan does not mean water with ice when he says water on the rocks. He means water with an actual rock inside the water bottle. In this case, the rock is a quartz crystal, which Chris believes purifies the water and helps him channel his magical powers. So yes, he quite literally drinks water on the rocks. X is for XXX Tended. Sonichu number 8 is very clearly the most controversial issue in the entire series. Chris Chan created 3 versions of the comic, which he intended to be viewed by people of various ages, with one being for kids, one for teens, and one for adults. The differences being that the kid-friendly version has no nudity, the teen version has censored nudity, and the adult, or XXX-tended version, has full nudity. The XXX-tended pun comes from an added chapter to the book in which the audience reads about how Sonichus and Rosechus mate. XXX is, of course, a common term for pornography. Y is for yellow is a mellow color. While the fact that yellow and mellow rhyme is not a discovery made by Chris Chan, the song Yellow is a Mellow Color certainly is his doing. Chris is known to make Weird Al-style parodies of real songs by keeping the tune and changing the lyrics, often to be about himself or Sonichu. Yellow is a Mellow Color is inexplicably a parody of the Macarena, even though the syllables do not fit very well with the original song.
Mellow color, yes it is, it's a mellow color. Sonichu sits beside me, hey, mellow color. Feeling a concentration, a little dripping in combination. Let's make, hey, mellow color. Coming out a zap, it's like traveling no map. Take a chill, pill and dance. Yellow is a mellow color.
Z is for zap to the extreme. This phrase appears on the iconic cover of Sonichu issue number 0. As this image is many people's first impression of the series, it has become an often referenced line. While Sonichu does announce his electric attacks quite often, zapping to the extreme has never been an in-universe catchphrase, and is purely a fan phenomenon.